Okay, closing thoughts and questions and whatever. I can stop at this point.
I think we have about 7 or 8 minutes left.
Sorry,
Last
it's
some
lengthy.
questions.
Yeah, questions.
I got it.
Okay, Allison and Charles. Yes.
Well, I just had a general, I guess, a question for clarification.
Okay.
Sort of relating to probably a broader research question that you've been involved with in terms of the violence.
Yeah.
Were you looking at, I was just curious, were you looking at sports or sports organizations and so forth as a means of facilitating violence or mitigating violence? Or is violence regarded as something that's an unavoidable byproduct of sports events? Or
Okay, that's a good question. As far as the violence aspect, it was an outgrowth of what we read. In some cases, in some of the early literature, it's things like Thai boxing and some of these other things were governmental concerns. If it hit the government, it was a concern in that government. And so in Australia, the Aboriginal Society is of concern because the teenagers there commit suicide at a greater frequency than other age groups and groups. That was a governmental concern. And so in the case of that, and they also committed more crimes and that sort of thing. So that was a focus there to mitigate those issues, which included violence. But in the process of doing these interviews and reading, it emerged. I didn't go in there focused on looking at that. It was very broad-based because we didn't necessarily know what we were going to find. Like the surprise to me was, it shouldn't have been, I guess, but since I was looking at sport and leisure, I wasn't thinking environment going into Costa Rica, and then that whole thing comes out. The whole country has, generated environmental protection, and that affects what you can do as a nation. Does that help?
Well, are you saying that the violence though is like a byproduct of engaging in sport, or? I'm just wondering how you're connecting the violence to sport.
Okay. I was looking at how it emerged from why they had a policy to begin with and what they said in the policy. So in some cases they would have in the policy itself a safety and security aspect, and it would have to do with hooliganism. In England, that came up with that study. So that's a violent thing around a sport environment. So they have something to try to address those crowds and those issues in their policy, and then delivery through the different sport clubs. In Australia, it was how this might deter crime. But I didn't really look at it as, is this a byproduct? But there were byproducts, let's put it that way, that we discovered. Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. Charles?
Yeah, you used the term earlier, misuse of sport. And we typically think of sport as a good thing. Could you just give us a couple examples of what a misuse of sport is?
Yeah, about 100. But
Okay.
well, the thing is, the concerns nowadays are how it's become serious leisure and serious, and it's become a path to greater reward through scholarships and then pro, and the pressures that people are under to create these organizations that can deliver these high-level athletes. Okay, so the misuse for commercial gain, like to improve the standing of a particular area by having teams and groups and that type of thing. The misuse of people, kids particularly, who are put into this pressure machine before they're ready, willing, and able, and even interested. That type of thing is what I was getting at. It's a much broader area. Frank?
Yeah, I have a question. I was curious, you're using so many different individuals that have been through the program as doc students or master's students to go out and be a part of this study.
Yeah.
I'm curious, there are some people that would argue that if you're using semi-structured interviews, then the interviewer is part of the instrument. And I was curious as to how you managed some of the potential issues that it could arise from having like multiple instruments almost out there in the field gathering data.
Oh, sure.
How
Perfect.
did you do that?
Well, that was what we were worried about. So our meetings we have meetings, regular meetings, to help maybe deal with the inter-rater reliability thing. First of all, we weren't immersed. You can be an instrument who is involved, and you can be an instrument who isn't. So our protocol was fairly clear. It's the 7 questions, and then, you know, additional probing. And that might have varied, the probes, but the 7 questions were basically asked the same way, the same repetitive way each time. The other issue was language. And we found that with the first study, because we used seven different languages sent out to countries. So we know when we do the quantitative part, we'll have to do that again, and maybe even more languages. And so, no, you don't get away from it. But I think because there was a standard protocol that we discussed and went through, that it helped to some extent. The other thing is we had a lot of other things, documents and field notes, and then we're going to update some of this information, right, literally using the websites of these different organizations to upgrade, and then using even further interviews. But you can't get away from it. But the only thing is, it's not as the protocol isn't as rigid and qualitative, I guess. I hate to say it that way, but we still have the transcripts, and they were all taped and that type of thing. So, you know, I don't know if that answers it. You could criticize that as an issue, but we tried through meetings and through really, you know, going through the process a lot to do that. Yes.
So, what kind of other external threats has your research encountered to the validity of your findings?
Oh, I would say there's, you know, travel conditions, travel opportunities, some of the things that can happen. I think also, when we were in a big country, we did the national government. You know, again, it was always based on availability of these people, and I think we got high-level officials at all the big, you know, all those countries. And but when we had to decide on what to do for the local, for example, in Australia, we went to Victoria, which is the most active region, because we knew we'd get a lot of things. But then we don't have good information on the less active regions, even when we know the same information goes out from the national. So the weakness is that it isn't a complete story. And when you do qualitative, you only generalize. You don't generalize really, but it's what is here is what you have. And you can say things about what you've interviewed, but you can't generalize to the other, you know, states or provinces or whatever. So I would say that future research is to take the same process and go to another province. You know, we might have an Australian student sometime who likes this, and they'll say, hey, I'm going to do the whole country, you know. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to make sure those, you know, other provinces are taken care of. And in Canada, we only used Ontario. In the United States, we used Indiana. We got 49 other states we could look at. So there's a limitation with that local service provision part and the state's involvement, I think. And that has to be, you know, obviously a problem for other people to solve. One thing to note, all of this is going up on a website, and it's going to be available for researcher access only, permission-wise, or some of it's going to be available publicly. Because that was the other part of my journey to England, was to work with Barry Houlihan and Fred Coulter on policy analysis, and to get that more, you know, involved, and then to develop a website. So things are all uploaded, but we just have to launch it. We're going to launch it later this year. Yeah.
Are your data far enough along so you can draw some conclusions about relationships? For example, like does religion play a role in the development of policy? Does level of diversity in the country play a role, etc.?
Yes, I guess I could, but I haven't really, you know, I mean, I think I'm going to see more, yeah, I focus more on the culture, like the obvious cultural out thing, you know, what I observed there. And I think with some of the Kyrgyzstan areas, the religion features in a lot more than other areas. So, but I don't think yet I've gone with some good ideas.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Jamieson, for this presentation.